So let's go. Big welcome to Anthony Golly. So first of all, thank you very much for coming on. I really love the topic that we've got, so I won't spend too much time talking, but we're going to talk about raising empowered families. And what better time to talk about that than right now, where we're being given so many opportunities to reframe what it is that we want to, how do we want to live? Like, what are we really doing here? So one of the benefits that I think a number of people are speaking about with regards to what's happened over the last couple of years is it has really made people reframe what's important, establish their core values, get very strong on what it is that they're creating here. So Anthony, first of all, welcome. And do you want to just give everybody a little bit of a background on yourself, and then we can hit the topic?
Yeah, sure, mate. Good to be here, Tom. I grew up in Ballina, loved the surf, loved sport, super active. Thought I wanted to work with athletes as I was growing up. I was in the army when I left school. I loved that. I thought I was going to be a sniper, special forces, all that kind of sneaky peeky stuff. I was studying actually human movement. I was lifeguarding, playing soccer at a high level, pretty much just burning the candle at all ends. And then I ended up in hospital. I had meningococcal. I almost died. And that was really pivotal. You know, there's that saying, your voids become your values. And I thought I was really healthy. I was fit, but I wasn't healthy at all. And it was one of those pivotal moments. So my neck hurt, my back hurt, because I got a lumbar puncture. When I kind of came to, my girlfriend of just probably a few months, she was like, do you know what you had? I said, I have no idea. And she said, oh, you had meningococcal. And I kind of laughed, like I still got my arms and legs. And it was all pretty funny to me, but the people around me, it wasn't at all. So anyway, I ended up going to a chiropractor. And that blew my mind. He was talking about this thing called innate intelligence, and there's a universal intelligence. And if we can just, the body doesn't need any help, it just needs no interference. And it was the first time I was like, this is really true. Like, this just resonates with me, what he's talking about. And then I was inspired to go and do chiropractic. And I absolutely love that. So I combined what I knew with exercise science and with chiropractic. But from that perspective, not, waiting till people had bad backs, bad necks, and then trying to fix them, but actually teaching people that they do have this incredible wisdom inside of them, this intelligence. And if they can just honor that and look at, well, how does that respond best? And what can we do? So a lot of, I love the word doctor. It means to teach, not prescribe. And so I did workshops week in, week out, and just taught my patients everything I knew, what I was interested in. And so we'd have packed houses. We'd have like 120 people, and I'd just cram in and I'd teach them whatever I was learning about. And it was just a really beautiful community. It was a beautiful environment. And then, kind of the governing bodies that didn't really like that. I would go out into childcare centers, and I would just, wherever people would gather, I'd be there sharing. And it didn't make sense that they didn't like that I was teaching people to be well and not kind of perpetuate the sick care system. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
That's awesome. Really similar story to a lot of people. Sometimes it takes your own journey to have to awaken to that innate intelligence to become aware of it in the first place. Even Paul Chek, who I learned most of my holistic health from, he, despite knowing it, after a while, he wasn't living it. Like, he traveled around everywhere teaching, and he had severe adrenal fatigue and parasite and fungal infections. And it's one of the things to know it, but then to live it, something else. You really got to check how much you're burning the candle at both ends, as you said. So as far as, I love how you said that the word doctor means to teach, and that's what you were really doing. And that, I feel, is how we can allow others to help to empower themselves rather than them relying on any one thing in particular. And the topic that we want to talk about is raising empowered families. So I'm guessing from that topic and from the introduction you just gave, that empowerment is a big part of what you represent. So do you want to just speak a little bit into empowerment itself first from a general perspective, and then we can talk about raising empowered families?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not a chiropractor anymore. I kind of transitioned out of that. I realized I could do more good being in the world, being in the community, having an online presence, so there's a global reach, not constrained within four walls. So to be empowered, my impression of that is you alluded to values. And I think we live in a society where we're taught if you follow a particular recipe, then you'll be good enough to be happy. You know, if you kind of study and you get a good job, and, you know, if you're really smart, you'll be a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant, or otherwise get a really good solid job. And, you know, there's all these beliefs out there that if you follow them, you'll be happy. And people become really busy but empty. And conversely to that, there's the study of axiology. So axiology is the study of value. And the Greeks called it telos. It was our highest values. It was our true north. And when you honor your values and you realize that they're as unique to you as your fingerprint or, you know, your eye. And so when you look at your values highest through to lowest, and you live in accordance with your highest values, that's what gives us empowerment. We're in spirit, we're inspired, and we don't need approval from other people. We don't need other people's opinion. We just have this inner sense. And when we honor that above all else, that's what I consider to be empowered. When you give yourself permission to listen to your intuition, you listen to the downloads that you get, that you live a life where there's white space on your calendar. You know, it's not doing and doing and doing. You just get to be. And so through my journey, there was a situation where my wife and I were in Bali with little kids, and we just had a little bit of time to write a few goals down. And we wrote this one line, oh, one day we'll make a documentary. And we shut the book, and then kids were back, and then we forgot about it. But some time went by, and my brother called me, and he was in Iraq and Afghanistan and stuff like that. And his wife had passed from a brain tumor and left 4 children. So he came back from there and was playing Mr. Mum and really struggling. So he called me one day and said, look, I'm struggling. So we brought him in, we kind of detoxed his body, detoxed his mind, got him right. But then long story short, his youngest son, Liam, was 11, and he was about 80 kilos at the time. And it wasn't his weight. He'd kind of lost hope. He'd lost his mom. He was really insular. So he moved in with us. And when those workshops I was talking about, a guy came in and filled some of them. And he said, look, if you ever want to do something, the things you're talking about, I haven't really heard them before. They're not the same stuff recycled. So let me know. So I had this idea, let's bring Liam into the house and we'll just work with him how I would with anyone, but let's capture the process. So I called the producer, and then next thing he's at our door. And so we made this movie called Overfed and Undernourished. And it was really beautiful just how spontaneously it all came together. So I didn't have children. So we had young children at the time, but not an 11-year-old. And so I became really passionate because I saw what happened with Liam. So I ended up losing about 20 kilos in 3 to 4 months. But it was a byproduct of just getting his emotions right, getting him to grow his own food in the backyard and to harvest that and to eat it. And it really gave me a lot of confidence that if we can work with children, I find with adults, and it's been really obvious over the last 2 years, 18 months, people are so indoctrinated. You know, the system has been fantastic at creating good little worker bees, you know, through that industrial revolution where we needed people to, you know, the bell goes and you turn up and you do what you're told and you don't look left or right. And, you know, people who just follow that instruction. And the schooling system has been phenomenal at producing that. And then really unhappy people. but we've got a solution for them as well. Because on the weekends, you can watch your sport and drink your VB, and you've got that immediate gratification, and suck it up and get back to the factory on Monday. And so it's so outdated, but we see the effects of that. So I got jumped right in there and learned all my rights and started teaching people. I'm like, I'm going to change the world. And this is so obvious. It's like, if people just look, it's obvious what's happening. And then I was just flabbergasted how you can present information and people are just like, no. And then I just realized, because you've been taught, well, the man who stands at the front of the room, don't question what they say, just regurgitate back what you were told and write that on your answer sheet. And so I just realized what a fantastic job. And so the masses, in my opinion, they're gone, they're done. And I was just like, I want to make a difference to the next generation. How do we stop what's just happened by allowing our children to show their genius? So I've gone way off what you asked, but empowerment, children, it's really where it's at for me now. Because what we're doing is, there's so many people who, what I see, Tom, is people are being really comfortable, me included. And when you're comfortable, you're not entirely happy, but you just kind of suck it up and it's okay. But through this whole period, people have realized, man, if I don't change, if I don't embrace what I've always known intuitive, what I'd love to do, it does result in big pain. And so that's where we're teaching parents how to transition their children. Either they're already homeschooling, or they want to, or they do have that child who really does fit well into the schooling system. They're going to be good at their maths and their science and all of that. But they realize that's not what is going to equip them to thrive now and into the future. So we start with the parents. I've had the good fortune of spending time and studying lots of Indigenous cultures. And when you observe just how right they got it, where they lived in harmony with each other, with the earth, with the stars, like they just had it down. And they didn't put their children inside four walls and someone they didn't know allow them to spend the vast majority of their day picking up all sorts of values, all sorts of beliefs, all sorts of habits that probably aren't that constructive. They would just observe and they would pick up the values of the people and the peers around them, but they were allowed the time to develop their own interests and their own obligations, their own responsibilities. I think in today's society, we hear the word responsibility or obligation, and it's a bad thing. In Indigenous cultures, that was the highest honor. If you were given this responsibility, you had that obligation, that was your means of fulfillment. That was your means of contribution. If you didn't do that, you just weren't fulfilled. I'm going to pause. Do you have any other direction you want to take this, or do I just keep running with it?
Yeah, well, no, I mean, I love the direction you're going. I've had a lot of the same experiences, Anthony. So, learning a lot from Indigenous culture, seeing the disempowerment through the schooling system, which you're probably familiar is the Prussian educational system, which just breeds willing and obedient people who are expendable. And yeah, I mean, it's fascinating what has been created, but there are many solutions. And I know that that's what you're, where you've gone with things. So if you want to continue along that same line, I mean, I think you're right on the money. I'm definitely happy to hear more. And
awesome.
Then,
yeah, cool. Going. So I just start, I think, to shake it up for parents, regardless of where they're at, because they might be quite, still mainstream. And I just ask the question, what would you have loved to have learned growing up that you didn't, that you wish you'd learned, that would have better prepared you for life? And they'll say things like, well, communication or relationships or better understanding of money or value and all of these things, how to live sustainably. And then I just simply ask, well, are your children learning that? is what they're learning, is what they're experiencing, is what they're being exposed to, those things? And the vast majority of the people answer no. And then the next thing is, if we look at the future that's ahead of us, there's some big shifts happening, there's some big changes. What should they be learning on top of what you wish you'd already known? What are emerging trends? Should they know about their rights? Should they know about certain emerging currencies? There's all these things. And people realize very fast there's a gap there. And we can either put our head in the sand and think someone else is going to do a better, someone else is going to care about my children more than I do. And they realize that's not the answer. And so it kind of gets buy-in. They start to lean into that. And then all we've done is starting with, I think exemplification is the greatest teacher. I think to parent well, you do want to be a predominant influence in your child's life. You also realize it takes a village to raise a child. And so you consciously look at, well, who is in my village? Who am I looking to influence, to have, to model? And so you don't need to live in a village. That could be online. That could be being proactive with what your child watches on YouTube, not some of the crap that's there. And so that mentality, and then we go right into values. We want to start with, how do we learn what's most important to you? So we go through this values elicitation questionnaire, which really brings to the forefront what's most important to the adult, but also to their children, or if they're not verbal yet, to observe and to see what they gravitate towards. Einstein has that great saying, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it'll spend its whole life thinking it's stupid. And that's what we're doing. We put our children going, if you're not good at maths or English and you're not good at sport, then I don't know, go over there. I hope you're happy somewhere. Instead of going, well, we all have amazing gifts and talents, and how do we nurture those and bring them to the surface? So that's the first one. The second one is visioneering. I think we live in a culture that is so much about problem solving. And so we're in this structure where we go, where's my next problem? I solve that. Where's my next problem? I solve that. Instead of going, what is my true north? Where am I headed? Yeah, there'll be support and challenge along the way, but I'm not distracted by that. I expect it because I know where my vision is and I'm continually working towards that. And if that's created an alignment with values, not again, other well-meaning people's values projected upon us, so that, we're doing things because we think it'll make someone happy, but we're still, so it's huge. Just the process of getting people to comprehend, yeah, it's okay if you did what you loved every day. It's actually really okay. And you gave yourself permission to do that. And then as part of that, what if your vision is so big, it has to include more than you. It has to be something to do with contribution or a legacy. And so you're still adding huge value to society, but in a way that you're living in accordance with your highest values. We all watch someone who is just brilliant at what they do, and it inspires those who are watching to go, wow, that's amazing. And then we're in spirit, and then we're more inclined to do what we love to do. I think we watched our parents and our grandparents and our great-grandparents work really hard. They were moving from countries, they were establishing new cultures, it was necessary for us to survive. But then also we look at that and we really hold high work ethic in high regard, which is admirable, but it's sometimes stupid because we don't have to work that hard all day. When you look at Indigenous cultures, that's not what they did. As long as they had food, as long as they had shelter, which was a portion of the day, the rest was in ceremony. The rest was singing and dancing and swimming and in communion, relationship, and all of this. So I just think if we get back to knowing how we work out what's important to us, having vision, observe people who got it right. And then I came up with this term called a conscious flow curriculum, because all these people ask, but are you going to give us a curriculum? Are you going to give us a curriculum? Like, fucking curriculum. No, I'm not going to give you a curriculum, but what I'm going to teach you to do is, if you really want a curriculum, it'll come from this place. So once you got your values, once you know how to vision, once you look at the time, then you can reverse engineer and go, all right, if that's really what I'm inspired by, let's chunk some time for that on the calendar. Because I do believe that if we kind of go off a whim, other people's values get injected into our day, and we end up doing what's important to them instead of us. So I do believe you need to own time. That's the other thing we teach people is, how do you make time work for you? The other thing is, if people are living in their highest values, and I think there's kind of 3 F's. One is, if you have a passion that keeps you fit / healthy / vital, that kind of whole area. If you have a pursuit that keeps life fun and fulfilled, and then or a pursuit that has to do with finances. And if you're following those 3 F's, then you'll find a sweet spot. And then you can either monetize your values, or you're so good at what you do and you've got your financial game down that you're not part of the system. You're not exchanging time for money anymore, that money's working for you. So you do get to do what you truly love. And if we just teach our children how to do that from an early age, to keep following that value, to keep following their vision, damn, just the results that people get very quickly, they realize they are in flow. It's conscious because we chose to do it, and gosh, put it on paper and call it a curriculum. So that's in a nutshell what we're teaching people to do, to go through with their children in about a 12-week process, such that they continue to replicate that, every quarter. And whether they are preparing to have children, they've got babies, they've got toddlers, they've got teens, that process they can continue to apply. And the coolest thing is, the adults, the parents, they're the ones getting the greatest value. And so when they're becoming whole, they're actually giving themselves permission to do what they love. They're realizing, gosh, where did I go wrong? But when they can shift, now they can be a true role model for their children.
Totally. Yeah. I was actually just wondering whether, it's a must, because I'm sure that there's some parents who just want to allow their kids to, say, grow up empowered and have what they didn't have, and that kind of mentality. But I find it's quite rare for the kids to just take that if the parents sit in that, state of disempowerment themselves. So what do you see in that regard, Anthony, where if the parents don't find it themselves, how successful are the kids as far as raising an empowered family?
I think the kids have a chance. I read Anthony Kiedis, the lead singer of Red Hot Chili Peppers. I read his book. And I love the book, but the thing I got out of it, my children are only little. And I read it, I'm like, here's a guy who was, sleeping with people and selling cocaine on the corner as a little kid. And he kind of turned out okay. Like, that's arguable, but he was still of influence. He still has a life where I've got a mate I used to live next to in Melbourne who's his neighbor. So this isn't just he tells me what he does, and he seems quite happy. And I just thought, I can't mess parenting up. Like, he had no real conscious parenting at all, and he still did okay. And you look at so many people who grow up and everything that could have went wrong, parents weren't there. So I still believe there's a part that our destiny is our destiny, and children will have that innate intelligence, they'll have that intuition, they'll find a way. But man, the stuff I'm learning at 30 and 40, I'm 43 now, but I'm teaching my 9-year-old. I think that's what it's about, where you can just save them 30 years. Like if I knew what I knew back then and I didn't have to make the mistakes, there'd still be challenge. There'd still be, there'd be still stuff come up. Everyone's on their own journey. But I think what tends to happen, Tom, in my observation, is the way society works is we start with nothing, and then, we go through a schooling system and the money system and the big pharma system, the big agriculture system. And then by the time we do that loop, our next generation starts all over again. Instead of going, all right, everything I learned and I acquired wisdom, finances, health, and I passed that on to my children early so that where I got to, they then were on my shoulders. And then they go through that. And so as we evolve, we're actually becoming awakened, and we're becoming more as a species. Whereas I think the system just kept people going around and around. So I think it's possible, but man, I think the people are attracted to the work we do. The parents are looking for it, and they're already on their way. They've already done some stuff. They just need permission, really, and they just need a couple of strategies. And then I think a community. It's always nice to lean in on other people who are on the same journey. But I think, like I said at the start, if you ask good questions of people, those Socratic questions, just ask, where are your children? Are they learning what you think is going to equip them for the future? And this is what I know to be true. Most adults will do more for their children than they'll do for themselves. And that's what I'm actually liking, because I love working with kids, but if the adults need to make the change, if I said, hey, come do a personal development course with me, to the adults, they'd be like, nah, but I can help my children. And then they end up in the course, and then they're growing and evolving because they'll do it for their kids, but they're getting to do it with them as well.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Because a lot of people, I see that in martial arts as well, that parents end up getting into it with the kids to do something with it. And then they find that they have an outlet or a passion or something. Like you said before, if you can do something that you enjoy, that gives you that ability to move your body and to stay fit and healthy, that's one of those roads to being empowered, for sure. Yeah. So is there anything else there to add as far as, if we're raising an empowered family, it's like you said, a lot of it comes down to the kids, and that people will do more for their kids than they will themselves. Just branching out a little to what that looks like in some ways. Are you seeing a lot of people, for example, really becoming more aware of their diet? You made that documentary, and you've been in that space a lot as well. So can you just speak a little bit about what that begins to look like? Is there more, less obesity, for example, in families that are empowered? Because we see a lot of kids these days. If you go to some of the, some towns in Australia, if you go to the shopping malls or the shopping centers, you'd think it was, it's not a pleasant sight. So I'm wondering if what you see as a result of empowered families, are you seeing physically healthier kids and parents? Are you seeing that they have more predilection towards the pursuit of something creative? As you said, Indigenous cultures would spend only a very relatively small amount of time working, and the rest is dedicated to ceremony, creative pursuits, their spiritual practices, and everything else. So
100%. But I think it comes back to when you're not fulfilled, then, and you don't have a vision that's long-term, it's easy to have immediate gratification. And so whether that's, I'm going to fill up on Netflix, I'm going to fill up on, I get stuck in the scroll hole on social media, and I know everything what's happening with the celebrities, and then, that food's there in front of me. And it's just, we live in this quick fix, immediate gratification, which is secondary, I believe, to not having purpose. But when you have purpose and you have a long-term vision, you naturally make better food choices because you want to be around, you want to have the energy. But teaching that concept to kids when they're little, realizing, my son, one of the things I say is hurt people hurt people. I teach that to kids really young. And so when someone is acting out or their behavior is not reflective of who they really are, we don't go and attack them. We don't hit the ball back and get into stress, and just allowing, being conscious is having awareness. You're not just playing these automated patterns over and over, and they get ingrained so early with children. But if they can observe themselves, and I think the key is this, again, it comes back to questions. I'm constantly just asking questions of my children to allow them to come up with the answers. Because when I speak to, like, we do a little webinar and I'll say, what are the attributes, or what are the characteristics we'd love to nurture and really foster and bring out of our children? And it'll be things like resilience, critical thinking, problem solving, resourcefulness. And so if we know that's what the character traits are that we want to really nourish it and bring forth, we've got to be conscious, well, what stories can we tell that allow that? When they're in certain situations, what questions do we ask? So it does become quite involved, and it is an art for the parent, but one that's so rewarding. And one of the first things we teach parents to do, I think back to when you were young, and your parents just seemed like another race at some stages, like the generational gap was so different.
Yeah.
And we get a lot. So I'm teaching these things, but totally forgetting most parents aren't even in rapport. They have no trust from their children, because they'll walk in and their children are gravitating towards a screen. They're playing Minecraft or something like this. Or the one that got me, and I'll confess here, I don't know if you got children and they're not playing a game, they're watching YouTube, watching other people play games. And it's rampant, and I'm like, I can't even handle, I don't even want you on the screen, let alone if you're going to play a game, play the game, but don't watch someone else play the game. And I would come in and I would burr up at them. And then later I'd reflect, going, there's something that really appeals to them in that. And if I can find out what it is, then I can maybe direct it in a different way. But as soon as I come in and go, oh, this is ridiculous, what are you doing, wasting your time there? In their mind, they equate, Dad doesn't really understand me. What I love, he doesn't even take the time to lean in and go, what's it all about? And so I started doing this. I went, what are you playing? Minecraft. Wow, tell me about that. Well, you got to do this stuff. What do you love about it? Oh, well, you get to collect things, you get to build things. I get like, man, they're being really creative. But when I did that, now I'm in rapport, and then I could help move them. And so what I teach parents to do is, if you want to really connect with your children, tell stories about what life was like when you were their age. What did you love to do? Who were your mates? What are the challenges you were facing? How did you overcome them? And if you can create some special time where, if you kind of know what their values are and what you like, and it might be fishing together, it might be mountain biking, but you've got to make the time to do that and fill their cup up first. And on that, tell them what life was like. And, when your first kiss, if they're starting to look at girls, and just, if you can be super vulnerable, it's the quickest way just to bring that bond really tight. And then from there, once you're in communication and once you can have these discussions with them, you can ask better questions. And it's like, this is the thing. My belief is we're born whole, happy, healthy, complete. And then we go through individuation, where we start realizing, okay, to experience the world, I'm separate. There's contrast. But now I'm not complete somehow. And then we go through life, and there's all these disowned parts that we don't love about ourselves. But my belief and my observation is that the universe is continually guiding us. It's putting challenges in our way to reflect back to us what we don't love in order to become whole. And I think our children are the biggest things that are put in front of us to reflect back at us. And so if you do choose the home I hate the labels, but if you choose to school from home or unschool or whatever, and you're living with your kids 24/7, it is the biggest personal development course you will ever do. You know, you can go read the book, you can go do the course, but then you come back from that. With this, like, they're continually pressing your buttons, helping you realize what your patterns are, what your triggers are, what you hate about yourself. So it's a real trip, but I think it helps us grow. I think it helps. And when you can be vulnerable with your kids and go, man, I just yelled at you, and you come back like, oh man, I messed up. You know, when you said that, it made me feel like this, and that is not, you know, what I think of you. And when you can confess and you come back to them and they're like, oh, that's okay, Dad. Like, it can be really beautiful and messy and real.
Very much. I'm actually wondering your perspective on that vulnerability with kids. So, for example, in my experience, my parents used to always pretend, and I could tell they were pretending. You know, they didn't have any vulnerability. That everything was always okay. There was always enough money. There was never any relationship issues between the two of them, for example. But kids can tell, right? Like, kids are intelligent beyond what a parent will give them credit for. And it's actually that inability to be open and honest, to allow your children the ability to go, no, you know, you are mature, and you can hear this, you know, and to be open with it. Whereas to be closed, in my experience, built distrust in my parents, because I knew something was wrong. I didn't know what, but I just knew they weren't telling the truth. And that built in me a rift between me and my parents. That connection wasn't there because I always felt that they weren't really being honest or giving me, you know, enough cred, so to speak, to go, yeah, look, it's not great between the two of you, but give me the chance to handle that, you know. And I never felt that they actually gave me that. So do you see the same sort of thing in what you do? Can you speak a little bit about that, as you mentioned, the vulnerability aspect?
100%. So again, as we go through life, there's good, there's bad, there's black, there's white, there's male, there's female, there's yin, there's yang, there's North Pole, South Pole, you know, sympathetic, parasympathetic. There's the polarities of life. And if we have this lopsided view that for my child, everything's going to be happy and I'm just going to protect them and it's just going to be good. And, you know, oh, he's getting bullied. Oh, but he swore, but that doesn't matter. Like, it's ridiculous. In fact, when you look at, there's a book, I don't remember it, but they looked at billionaires, and the one trait that was common through all billionaires, some came from money, some came from nothing, but it was their ability to deal with adversity. And so one of my things I want to be really conscious of is we've created a great lifestyle. I didn't come from money, but we've created a great lifestyle. And I'm super conscious that I want my kids to have challenge. I want them to have adversity, but also I want to be real with them. So if something is stressful, I'll tell them why I'm stressed and this is why I'm behaving. Once I've caught myself, which they've probably pressed a button for me to realize, but it's that ability to allow them, like, if you think about, if we look at the suicide rates right now, off the charts all time, particularly with kids. And one of the single biggest ways to, the challenges with that is they feel they can't share what's going on. They can't share their emotions. They don't feel like they can speak to someone for support. And if they've observed their parents, whenever something's wrong, we don't talk about it. We're kind of perpetuating, or we're planting the seed. That's how we deal with things. Similarly, the classic, you think about a child, they fall, they hurt themselves, they have an emotional upset, something when they're young. And typically the immediate response is we'll go, oh, here's a lolly. or can I get you something to eat, or have a special drink?
Mm-hmm.
And we start connecting the dots early that to deal with any kind of pain, spiritual, physical, emotional, I get it from outside in. Because mum gave it to me, nana gave it to me, whatever it might be. Then we get to teens, and life is changing. Life is more challenging. There's girls, there's boys, there's drugs, there's all sorts of stuff. And then as we're dealing with emotions, if we go, oh, I'm not dealing with this, and your mates are going, hey, here's this, it's very easy to go outside in. Instead of, again, this is what we teach in the course, teaching kids breath work, teaching kids meditation, teaching kids, how the physiology of their body actually works and how they can produce emotions and where emotions come from, how we use our body, how we use our breath, the questions we ask ourselves, what we focus on. Then it allows, I think that's the other aspect of being empowered. I'm at the cause end of my life. I'm the predominant creative force. But in order to do that, I think, getting back to your question, Tom, we got to give our children credit that they can handle what we put in front of them. Because if it's not from you, from a conscious point of view, they're going to get challenged. They're 100% going to get challenged. That's why the bully in the playground is necessary. When you look at life, when you look at ecosystems, there's no single part that just has all support. Something's always trying to eat something else, and that's what allows it to be. Yet when we raise our children, it's so, I'm not going to say it that way, but yeah, I think the more that we can allow the truth, and I think the other thing that's pertinent to this topic is what's relevant for that child. I have parents who they would consider themselves conscious, and I'm a truther and I'm a light worker, and I don't follow the masses and don't put this in me, but they've created so much fear in their children at the other end of the spectrum. Instead of just going, they're not even inquiring about that, they're not inquisitive about that. So let them go on with what they're attracted to do. If it starts coming up, tell them the truth at a level that they're going to comprehend. Don't try and sugarcoat it, but try and share through stories, through metaphors. But yeah, trying to pretend it's all okay and mummy and daddy okay and there's no financial stress. Let them know. Again, if they've got obligations and responsibilities, that's a contribution to the family. When we set goals and we have visions, we'll always do it as a family. So the children, and we've been doing this for years, they're 11, 13 and 9 now, but they know their part in that goal. If we've set something and we've got more courses to run and more people to help, there's going to be some nights that we're not going to be able to put you to bed. But do you realize at the end of that, what would be something great we could do? Or what would be your part? Or what we just ask them, how could you help out in the house to allow us the time to do that? Because if we're on calls and then we got to come and then we got to clean the house and tidy up after you, we don't get to spend the quality time with you. So what could you do? I'll do the washing. I'll do this. I'll vacuum. Fantastic. So again, it takes thought and it's just a pattern. But once you get into it and it's just, I don't know, it's just a much more in tune kind of flow way to do life without trying to fit into the system that, I don't know, it feels really broken to me, the system does.
Very much. I think we all feel that. I really love what you've been covering because I think there is a disconnect from reality, I think, in a lot of ways. And everybody seems to go through their phase where they go through to the opposite end almost of what they, I want to give my kids everything that I never got, or my parents were so overbearing that I'm never going to tell my kids what to do. Yeah. And you see it, and that's equally disempowering for the kids. So I love your approach where you're talking about you're setting boundaries, you're creating discipline, you're allowing them to develop creatively and critical in thinking, but you're also not sheltering them. You're allowing them to have adversity. You're allowing the challenges, like everything that's going to make an embodied human being. I really love that approach, because that's like the personification of holistic. So when we talk about health, like you've got to have good physical health alone, you've also got to have good mental, emotional, and spiritual health. Otherwise, the physical body's not going to function that well. And the way that you're approaching things is to me, it appears very holistic in nature. And I think that this is a time that we're realizing how important that is in every aspect. So we're going to open up to questions. I haven't seen many questions in the chat at the moment. I mean, maybe there's none. I mean, I think you've covered a lot of great content there. But if people do have questions, please put them in, and we'll shoot them over to Anthony. So while people might be coming up with a couple of things, you've reminded me a couple of times of a quote, and it goes along with your overfed, undernourished, Doco, and that's that the more you feed the soul, the less you need to feed the body. And at this point in time, with what we're seeing in the world, do you think that that's probably more important than ever? Or how are you seeing that playing out at the moment?
I think the biggest challenge right now is either people had a vision and now it's really clouded because the way society is structured is changing through mandates. I don't understand certain things. I can't travel. And so the vision they had, they feel it's not attainable, or they just never had a vision. And so then they're at the whim of however society is resonating. And so they're picking up on the fear, they're picking up on the doubt, they're picking up on the doom and gloom, and they want to feel empowered somehow. They want to have certainty. Certainty is a huge factor for the human psyche. Mm-hmm. And so they find certainty through a group. But then you go into the group and it's just like every YouTube video that's mostly to do with disempowerment. It's not around solutions. It's not around finding a purpose. And so I think it all comes back to, if people can have some kind of purpose, and I'll give you an example just so that I don't leave people stranded. I have a family I've looked after, and since the little boy and girl were like tiny, and now they're about, I'd say like 18 and 21. And he was fanatical about sport and became a really good cricket player. And he was just at the cusp of, making state teams and into like junior international teams and that kind of thing. So he moved to Melbourne from the Gold Coast, went into lockdown. And for a 21-year-old kid, like, this has been everything. Like, what else is there? And so I'm trying to help them realize that your identity isn't a cricket player. What are the attributes that you've developed? What are the characteristics? What are the skills that you've developed? And what do you actually love about cricket? Is it that you get to have continual perseverance at one particular thing? Is it the teamwork? Is it the recognition? And if you kind of dissect what they are, you can take those skill sets, those attributes, and apply them in another 1,000 different ways. But we're so hung up on, no, I'm a nurse. No, I'm in construction. Well, that's not your identity. You're way bigger than that. You're way more powerful than that. And if you just stop, because you've been given that from the universe, to say you're not on path. If you're on path, you'd still be doing it. And so people aren't looking for the opportunities today. They're stuck whinging, bitching, moaning about the problem, instead of just going, hey, this is it. I only get one crack at life this time around. What am I going to do with it? And this is what hit me, because I've sat stagnant for a little. I never sat stagnant. That's a lie. I was off purpose. I thought I'm going to be the next person who helps people with their rights. Tom and Nick and so many other people, that's really their jam. And I can teach well. So I did it for a little while. Then I realized I'm stressed. I'm not present with my children. I didn't like when 8-year-old daughter kept having to answer the door to the police, and Daddy, the police here again. I'm like, this is, I could probably do different with this. There's already great people that people can follow in that. So I think it's getting back to what's in front of me, what's within me, and what are the opportunities. I think we're just living in the greatest time in human history, where it's just got this one big almighty shakeup, and it's what we do with it on the other side. So if people can just let go of the certainty a little bit, and not fill up. This is the other thing. Through all the lockdowns, people are just consuming Netflix series and putting on kilos, and the number of parents who are like, man, we just got to get the kids back to school because I can't stand to be with them, instead of embracing it and going, okay, how can we learn and grow together? What's actually the opportunities here?
Totally. I love that. We're going to go through a couple of questions now. And then once we've gone through those, we'll just do a quick wrap up, and then you just let everyone know how to find the courses and everything and connect with you. So the first question, Anthony, is do you have any advice for people who, I just lost the question, it went down the screen. Do you have any advice for people who don't have a family and kids, but want them, qualities to look for in a partner, etc.?
I love that question. Well, it's just like a typical date, isn't it? When you go on a date with someone, you've got all your values written out and all your rules, and then they've got all theirs, and you exchange lists, and you look, oh, look, you've got 2 high values that match mine and your rules. And, you know, when we have children, do you think we'll get them vaccinated? Like, people do that, don't they? Ask all the big important questions. No, it's all based on chemistry and, oh, wow, she looks like this and she's got eyes like this, and which is fabulous. But I think the clearer you are with your path, your purpose, who you are, you'll attract the right person. And it's probably not the right person you think in your mind. And I think this comes back to, again, when you watch the movies, it's very romantic. And you watch the shows and it's all very lovey-dovey, and it's just like, oh, I'm like, that's how it's going to be. And it can, I'm not disputing that that's a part of it. But when you look at relationships, if the purpose of it is to help you to grow to the greatest depth you can, to evolve the greatest that you can, to expand your influence, your spheres of consciousness, all that cool stuff, then the right person to spend your life with is the one who is going to help you grow the most. And they'll do that by supporting and challenging you, not just love, like that'll wear out. Yeah. So I think it's just being aware of that. And then if you look at, well, what's most important to me? If you know your highest values, you're going to want to have the top 1 to 4 in common, at least a couple of them. But then you want to make sure that you're whole and complete, that you don't need them. It's this whole, you complete me. Well, that's a fallacy, because if you need someone else for you to be whole, then that's just not how it works, in my opinion. I'm definitely projecting some of my opinions here, so take it for what it is. But then you'll know what's most important in what you're looking for, but also have an awareness that it's not going to be all butterflies and rainbows. There will be challenge. And if you've got the highest value in your vision, this is the thing. Instead of looking at each other like side on, and so you're turned shoulder to shoulder and you have a common vision, you'll go through the support and challenge together. So just on that, you know, my wife and I, we've been together, holy dooly, I was 18, she was 16, and I'm 43, so 25 years. It's been pretty cool. You know, I don't hear too many of those stories around. and 3 kiddies. So we weren't high school sweethearts. We once I left and went to the army, then I came back. We got together then. So yeah, that's a journey. That's a journey. But I think because we've had that understanding that there's no way I could be the person who I am today without the challenge of Kate and also the support. All right, that's enough on that topic.
Love it. Yeah, it's so good to hear. I already love those stories too. You know, it's pretty rare to find people that met like at that age and that have had the types of experience you've had. So it's really good to hear. From Josh, Josh's got a question here that says, do you have any advice? Sorry, that was his question. What's the next one? Petra, considering homeschooling my nearly 7-year-old. She's an only child and I'm a single mum. I'm concerned about her socialization with other kids and missing out on that part of her development. No one around me is considering it, although I do live in Vic, so that may change soon. Do you have any advice on connecting for that socialization side with other kids, and also on the flip side of homeschooling and me having time to earn money?
Yeah, I love it. They're the 2 biggest questions I get. The first one, again, in traditional cultures, the children interacted with the babies and older children and teens and parents and uncles and aunties and grandparents and wise men, and they knew how to communicate and interact across all parts of society, all demographics. And then we go, oh, you're 7, you're born between these dates, so we're going to put you in that 4 walls and you're all going to just be together and learn that thing. It's ludicrous. And so we know, like my eldest, we've homeschooled him the longest. My youngest, biggest social butterfly. I never, ever thought that she would homeschool. And we've given them the option every time. And I still say, if you ever want to go back, just let me know. And so they continue to choose to do this. But when we looked at their values, friends was really high, which is quite interesting because it wasn't for me. I was the achiever. I was just like kind of, and it's so interesting because I learn so much from my children. I think if this is another great belief to take on. You're not here to teach your children. You're here to grow with them. And you can learn as much from them as you want to teach them. And when you have that perspective, you ask questions. You don't tell them what to do. You co-create life together. You come up with agreements to allow, I start teaching them contract law. I start teaching them rules of equity. I'm like, if we're going to have an agreement, let's have full disclosure. Let's get informed consent and let's come up with an agreement together. And then so we've just bought a farm, and that was very much because they love animals. Zara wants to be a vet, all this stuff. So I'm still coming to terms with we're moving from beachfront. I get to roll out my front door and surf. Now we're moving to a farm. But I'm like, I know in a few months, the hype of this, the excitement of this, it's going to wear off. And you need to go bring the cows in and you need to go pick the food today. And so I thought about how can we get an agreement? I said, what are you going to love most about being on the farm? And I do a little writing assignment on it. And how do you think you're going to contribute to the farm? Oh, I'll mow, I'll do this. Fantastic. And so they wrote it all down. And so we get an agreement. And so we both sign off on it. And I'm going to keep that piece of paper really handy because I know it's going to come back to help me in a few months. But man, I digressed there, didn't I? Socialization. So for Zara, we did her values. Friends was really high. And so we just look at our week, and when they're doing, it's not schoolwork, but when they're with me, we know what friends are around as soon as they finish school, or there's more and more coming across and homeschooling now, that they know. And our house is like a turnstile of children every afternoon, where either they're coming here, she's going there, most other nights are sleepovers. And then the other thing is I just went, where in our society is there going to be a bunch of kids who have like-minded, they're active, they're fit, And so I loved surf club growing up. There's a surf club just down the road. I'm like, everyone who goes there will probably ride there. They'll be in this area. They went kicking and screaming, but I said, look, just trust me, guys. If you really don't love it after a few weeks, but now they're just like hooked on it. So you come up with ways that they get that socialization, and they realize if you go to school, you spend a little bit of time with your mates beforehand. In the classroom, there's not much interaction. You have a little bit of time at little lunch, a little bit, and then you're gone. Whereas with this, the quality time they have with their friends is much bigger. And then the second question is, the financial side of things. The way I stepped away from chiropractic was creating income online. And so one of the things that we help people with is looking at, well, what are your highest values? What's your wealth dynamic? So different people create wealth in different ways. Some are mechanics, not as in fixing things, but they're good at putting things together. Others are stars. Other people are accumulators. And so if you kind of know your values, you know the different ways, you can then align to something, whether it is crypto, whether it is property, whether it is a home-based business. There's so many ways to create income outside of the system. Again, that the system has kind of mocked and looked at and gone, this is bad, because that doesn't perpetuate the system. So we kind of got to drop the ego and look at things for what they are and go, all right, does this align with me? And so that's how we help people transition to that as well, where they get to, and that's the other thing, we do a lot of our businesses with our children. We teach them social media, how it can be good and how not to be addicted to it. Because that's the other thing parents struggle with, is their kids just want so much screen time, and just having open conversations. What's the detriment of that? How could we use it for good? So is that helpful? Thanks, Petra.
Perfect. That's a really good answer. It's one thing to just give an answer, but to be comprehensive like that, I think people will really appreciate it.
Welcome.
So the next question then is, how does one start making the changes they want in regards to relationships with partner and children, health for the mind, body, and soul, but are feeling so overwhelmed with everything you want to change and with everything else that is going on in our country?
All right, I'm a visual learner, so I'm going to read it. How does one start to make changes they want in regards to relationships with partner and children, health for the body and soul, and are feeling overwhelmed with everything? So if you're going to make a change, if you're going to make a transition, my belief is it can't come from a place of fear. It can't come from a place of lack or from doubt. So whether you meditate, whether you can take a little bit of time out of life, someone can look after children. Like when you come back, it'll still be there. The mess will still be there. Life will still be there. So if you can separate yourself from that, and get into some kind of space where you can be still, or do what you love. If you already know you love surfing or running or something with movement, just to get grounded again. And it may not happen in a go, but if you get into some kind of ritual like that, and then you start to journal, if you do start to put things in your ears, if you do start to read, things will start popping out at you. If you have, put it this way, your brain is the most incredible computer. And if you ask the question with enough consistency and enough emotion, it will 100% give you the answer. And as you get clearer, the whole universe will start to conspire, and you'll just be blown away how quickly things can change. So that's how you start to make the changes, by setting the fear aside, setting the distraction, like get off social media. You're not going to find your answer there, I promise. With your partner, I'd leave your partner out of it for now. Get yourself right, because then when you come back to it, you'll know who you are. Same with your children. Leave your children. Just you get yourself right. If you get that right, what you start putting in you will be the right choices. And then you're only overwhelmed because you're looking at too much at once. If you just choose one thing, that's what I would say there. Everything's going on in the country. You know what? If I'm not on social media, today was a freaking amazing day. I had a swim at the beach. I played with my kids. I improved the house. Amazing. But I could get on and I could click on what's going on in WA, and I could read all these different posts, and I could turn the news on. I could make myself feel as overwhelmed and as bad as I want. And every day, both are always available. And so you just get to choose. It's been a good few months since I've really put my finger on the pulse of what's happening. Whereas in the past, it would be several hours a day. I feel way better doing it this way. I really do. Now, you might say that's naive. You have no idea what's going on. Yeah, I'm okay. You know, I'm aware of where the world's headed. I've got plans B and C. And so I think that's the other thing that takes the overwhelm out of the situation. If you prepare for the worst and expect the best, I've already got a plan. I've got a plan if it all goes to doom and gloom and we can go to the farm. And I know how to get out of the country if Australia really turns to shit. And so look into those things. And once you've got the plan there, you don't have to worry about it anymore. Just go back to doing what your purpose is.
Totally. And staying on purpose, as you mentioned earlier, that's a huge part of it, I feel, as well.
Yeah.
With the hang on, just go on to the next one here. Okay. This one's an interesting one. When there is an age gap between romantic partners, when do you think it is too much?
Why the relationship questions? This is the Raising Proud Families segment. When do you think it's too much? I don't know.
I don't think there's an actual answer to that, is there? I mean, it's no. Exactly how you answered the first one. It's either it's there or it's not. You know, sometimes there's reasons beyond our human understanding. And if we go to the spreadsheet and we go, oh, no, you're past that cutoff of the age or whatever, it might get in the way of something that's meant to be for whatever reason.
Yeah, 100%.
So we've got a question here from Gail. It says, my son just turned 18. He left the government school system in July this year. He never liked school, and when he did leave, he was totally broken. At the moment, he is okay, but there is a void because we are kind of in the nothingness place. No jobs because none are jabbed. Where do we go from here? Always being very close and open communication, but always doubting what I am doing as a sole parent with no real support from family.
Yeah. Start conversations like, if you could do anything, what would you love to do? If we could read 100 books or watch 100 YouTube videos, what would you love to watch? And what makes time stand still for you? Have you ever thought about just what you'd love to be known for? And if you start to come back to questions like this that take a person's vision from here, like just what's in front of me, to out there, then you can start making moves towards it. I have 3 tertiary degrees, and everything I do now to help people and generate income was not done via those degrees. It's via things I've learned, courses I've done, books I've read. Again, there's so much opportunity right now. We can look at the negative side of social media, the negative side of tech and big tech and all of that. Or there's huge opportunity, but you're not going to find it if we keep telling ourselves a story that we're the victim. We need to shift to go, I'm the victor. I'm still at the cause end. I'm still the predominant creative force in my life. And if it's with my family unit, we're going to co-create something together. But you've got to start taking actions, and you'll know you have inspiration because you're compelled to take action towards it. And then you'll want to start picking up different books or listening to different people. But I think I did a challenge last year because I called it the I'm Brave challenge. And so the I was for input So let's be deliberate what you're inputting. So it's in spirit, you're in inspiration. The M was motion, move. You can't make good decisions stagnant. Motion causes emotion. The B was breath. So using specific breath techniques, Google it. Or I'll try and get the link for this challenge. A free challenge. I was just done with people telling me this story. I'm going to put a 7-day thing together. So the B was breath. The R was resonate. So whether it's music, whether it's vocal stuff, that kind of thing. So how do you resonate? The A was affirmations. So not like foo-foo affirmations. The antithesis to what you keep telling yourself. So getting into exactly what you need to be telling yourself to form your identity. V was vision. So I took people through this little meditation, this visualization process. And then E was elicit. And so not as in I, as in elicit. So writing, allowing things to come out of you and being creative or writing things down. So I did a day on each of these for 7 days. I'm brave, I think at 7. That would be a good place to start, because it's going to give you the rituals to do every day of what to focus on. And these things are easy to do and easy not to do. But when you accumulate them over the course of a week, a month, 3 months, like 2 years has almost disappeared, for goodness sake, where people are just doggy paddling, like in spot, going, come on, Dan, someone's going to save me. Like, no one's coming to save you. No one's coming to save you. You're it. You get to choose how we go forward from here. So that's enough of that.
Yeah, perfect. We got one more. So I'm just going to go through this one. It's a sort of along the same lines, but I think it's going to be a good question because it can encapsulate that whole, a lot of what we've spoken about. So it says here, our values no longer align with our children. My children, now 21, 23, and 25, are upset that we speak out, that we do things different. They no longer believe in natural therapies and go to the doctor. I can say that I am closed to their way of life. I listen, but I don't approve. They got COVID jab, and this has broken my husband and I. Everything we have tried to bring them back to us has not worked, e.g. loving messages and photos. I feel it is just a waiting game. Nearly 2 years that I have lost them because of the pandemic. So, I mean, I'll let you take it away, but it does seem like there's a lot in there that's that you've spoken about so far.
Gosh. I've got this one quite a bit lately. Everything a person chooses to do is in alignment with what their highest values are. Our life is a reflection of the values that we have. And this is my observation. Our children, a lot of them have a high value for their friends. They have a high value for certainty. They have a high value for comfort. They have a high value for fitting in. If they have a partner or a mother or a father or friend, and they value freedom, and they value adventure, and they value truth, the conversation that those two people have, it's very difficult because they both think that they're right. And it's like someone who's Japanese speaking to someone who's German, and they just yell louder in the same opposite language. And so the only way that you can gain rapport is to communicate your values in terms of someone else's values. So if someone is here and they're communicating down to someone, that I'm just talking about what's important to me, I'm not listening to you, that's being careless. If you're putting someone else on a pedestal and you're down here and you're just, I'm not going to talk because I really want your approval, that's being careful. But being caring is when you take the time to really consider what's happening in that other person's shoes, what's happening, what's really most important to them, and you have no idea. So the only way to do that is to ask good questions, genuine questions, being super curious. being in a place where I just want to understand. My love for you is so great. I just would love to understand. And you need to then step right into them, step into their heart, step into their shoes. And what would it be like to see the world through this lens? Then you can start to go, you will feel how they feel, and you will get. So the people out there who are getting the jab and they really feel they're doing what they believe to be right. They're contributing to society there. And all those people who aren't following them, they're bad and they're going to jeopardize our health. Until we realize we're all on the same little blue dot flying around, or blue flat thing, whatever you believe, but we're all here together on the same ship. And while ever it's us and them, there's no win. So how do we find this place where we can consider? Now, if you're not in rapport because you've got a track record of not listening, not having the time, not building the values, your children, just like Tom was saying, where your parents protect you to go, you won't handle what I have to say, your children do it right back. They feel the same to go, I don't think mum could handle how I really feel. And so I'm not going to tell her. But then they get to an age and they start making the decisions that are in alignment with them. And it just blows parents' minds and hearts to bits. And so I like some of the things that you've done, everything we have tried right so far to bring them back to us has not worked. But love, you're just going to keep trying. And it's got to be from a place of wanting to really understand, really being curious. And this is what I've been telling people. Put relationships above being right. I've had my wife's pop turned 100 this year, a few months ago, and then he passed 2 weeks ago. And so my father-in-law sees the world the way that we do, but his sister and brother, one's a nurse and one just does what everyone else says. And so they went ahead and decided to have Pop get the jabs at 100. It just made no sense. And so my father-in-law just like, this is not okay. You know, I'm going to give him my mind. And I was like, Gaz, let's just think this through. Let's really think this through. What do you value more? Trying to educate them, trying to tell them, what's the likelihood they're going to listen? Like when you've tried sending just a little thing that's really factual and it's not hype, the response was, don't email me anything anymore. Like you have a choice right now. You're going to, like Pop's going to pass. You didn't know he was going to pass at that time, but at 100, you probably don't have a lot left. But that's still your sister and brother for a lot more years. That's still your cousins and nieces and nephews for a lot more years. And so what are you going to choose? Do you want to be in love? Do you still want to have a relationship with them? Or are you going to go and do and say something that can destroy that? And now I'm not saying, you know, bend over and take one. You still got to speak what's true in your heart. But I just feel there's a time and a place sometimes where, yeah, we're making enemies for the sake of it and then wondering why we feel bad and no one loves us. Man, this is heavy. This is cool stuff.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've got some contribution to that too, though, Tom.
Well, I mean, literally along the same lines as yourself. I mean, I really feel that there's a certain degree of wanting somebody to do something that's going to push them away a little as well. Like it's almost like, you know, if that bar of soap, you're trying to squeeze too hard, it can elude you. And just allowing things and allowing people to be. I mean, the reason that I'm still like fine with my family is because even though they're dead against me and they've all gone and done what they felt that they needed to do, I celebrate their decision to be able to do it. And as you said, Anthony, there's something in their higher self that needs to have that experience for better or for worse, for whatever reason. So realistically, for me, I just have a little bit of a celebratory moment and celebrate them for their ability to choose that and for the experience that they want to have. And then if I don't judge them and push them away as a result, then it does leave that open to be able to bridge back together at some point, whenever that point may be. It's not up to me to judge or decide necessarily when that will be. As long as my heart's open and I'm still on my purpose, then that'll just be when it will be. And so for me, I mean, that's not the same as me having kids. I mean, I can understand, will empathize that, having them all go the other way. But as Anthony mentioned, there is that element of, if we've tried to push something too hard and perhaps not being respectful enough of others in their journey, then they can end up doing the opposite. Same thing as you very well articulated, Anthony, that if my parents didn't really fully give me the credibility to be able to handle things, I did exactly that. I shut off from my parents. They don't know anything I've done in the last 20 years, pretty much, except for the trivial stuff. How's it going? Yeah, going here next week. And that's it. That's all they really get, because they didn't give it to me. And on some level, we've all got to take responsibility for what we've created. We might not have known any better as we did what we did. But at the end of the day, there is the consequence that we've got to, you take the lesson from in some way, shape or form. And the more that we can do that and be grateful for that, I feel that the faster there's the repair. Even if we have to go through a period of, as Anthony was talking about earlier, those times that it's not always sunshine and rainbows and lollipops. There's those other times, and they're equally, if not more important to us for our own learning, our own journey, and being able to get deeper into ourselves to be on our own purpose, because those serve us as well as, if not better than, the sunny days that, there's all rainbows and lollipops and everything that goes with it. So I want to be respectful of your time, Anthony, as well. Dave, is there anything that you wanted to jump in there? I mean, I think this has been inspiring and empowering, and very much appreciate your time, Anthony. But Dave, is there anything that you wanted to ask or wrap up with? We want to get Anthony's details too to everyone so they can connect with him.
I just want to add on that last one, is that you really want to be there for them when they're ready. So if you make these conscious decisions to be too forceful, then when they're ready to take on some of that information, they're not going to come to you, and potentially you'll have regret there. Is that if they choose to, so if you were to sort of say that, look, I've researched different options to detox. If you ever need that, if you ever have this, please come and see me. I respect what you've done, but, and you leave it more open, there's a chance that they'll be there, at that point. And they're usually not going to wake up from you. It's usually someone else is going to plant the seed, someone else is going to water it, and then they're going to start to ask those questions. And then if you're there to receive them and meet them at that place, then I think you have that ability to be there when you really need to be there. So that's what I would add to that part, is that, you don't want to close it off. And I know that you think it's the end of the world in some of these decisions, but you can't allow that to be the way in which you communicate, because it might be the end of your relationship and you might not have that ability to then be there when they need you. So, but apart from that, I loved it, mate. There was so much that I got out of it as well. There's so many similarities, in your relationship. I've got 3 kids. I've had a long relationship, the same stuff. And heaps of really good stuff. So, thanks so much for coming, mate.
Awesome. I love these formats. It's a bit more candid and just what comes out and what people ask, and it's meant to be, rather than the preparing slides and all that hoo-ha. Yeah. So thanks for having me. It's been really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, and we'll put it on the site and everything, but just for those that are on, do you want to just give a quick shout out for where people can find you?
I don't do any of this stuff. I'm sure it's just raisingempoweredfamilies.com.
Great.
I think that'll help you find us. Otherwise, I'm probably easiest contactable on Facebook Messenger. Just my name, Anthony Golay.
Perfect.
So yeah, any other questions or there's lots of different stuff we do with families and wealth creation and all that. But yeah, sing out if I can be of assistance or anything I've said's kind of struck a chord. I'd love to help.
Awesome.
Great. Well, we really appreciate it. Thanks very much. And thanks everyone for joining.